Chris Johnson.
Episode 3 with my boy Aaron Marshall of Intervals. Aaron's latest record is called The Way Forward. You can check it out wherever you get music or in the Players Pick podcast playlist on Spotify. All right, this is Players Pick podcast episode number 3 with Aaron Marshall, Intervals. I'm sitting on his bus outside of Slim's in San Francisco, and we're going to go through the usual questions here. One of my favorite things about Aaron, I just want to say before we actually get into it, is that I feel like he's one of the guys that like kind of holds this humble hustle on his sleeve. Like he's this guy that like has taken on all the duties of a band and producer and writer, engineer and marketing and like, you know, doing all these different management aspects of his own career, and also like has been just at the forefront of like asking his fans to participate in like what he's up to. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited because he's not only a friend, but also like I'm inspired by his drive to do what he does, and to see him be so successful in recent years is just a blessing to watch. So hey, it's good to see you, Aaron.
You too. Thanks for having me. Appreciate that. And that was like probably the best intro to an interview I've ever had. So my ego's on 11 right now, so that's good.
Sweet. We got you where we want you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cool. Well, as you know, Players Pick podcast, we talk about pick origin stories because it's one of the things that I feel like not very many people go very far into as a subject.
No,
you know?
It's cool.
So my primary question for you up front here is, what's your first memory of a guitar pick? Who gave it to you? And then, maybe walk us through a little bit of like what your memories are in that beginning phase, and then how it kind of transitioned, and maybe you're still playing a similar pick to what you started off at, but like how did you end up where you're at now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Actually, it's making me dig deep a bit. But my first guitar experience was, I had expressed interest to my dad that I wanted to play, and we went to a pawn shop and got my first acoustic guitar. And it was like a huge Takamine that I could barely get my arm over. I was so little at the time. It was such a chore. And it's funny to me that I didn't really latch on immediately. This only really lasted about a week, maybe 2 weeks. But when we got it, it was a little cumbersome and definitely challenging. I wasn't discouraged, but it just wasn't feeling the way I thought it would. Mm-hmm. Before I get to the pick part, for me, it was like I came home from school one day and found my dad with the acoustic in the living room, and he had like one of these little Mel Bay books out that is, he or somebody got me like when I was starting out, like, here, learn a few things from this. And he was playing like Ode to Joy or Greensleeves or something, and he was just picking away at the high E and the B string and figuring it out himself. And my dad has amazing taste in music. He's not the most musically inclined, but he's been, he curated the soundtrack to my childhood. So,
sure.
I'm thankful for that. But I felt like, I experienced that like feeling of drive, or like, oh, I'll show him, because like I wasn't able to really execute much with the instrument, and I came home to find him doing more than I had in the last week or two from getting my first guitar. So I was like, yeah, give me that thing. And then as soon as I figured out what was going on and understood the relationship between what's going on in my hands and what's happening on the page, I got hooked immediately. And I don't even think, we probably had some picks around, but I was probably just doing it with my hands. My dad's brother George was a guitar player, still is, but he took it seriously when he was younger. And I think, if I recall, George probably gave me an assortment of picks, as somebody in your life does when you're starting out, like, here, try all these things. And I remember like stuff like the purple stubby guys, like they look like a Jazz 3, but they what are those ones
big
called?
Stubby.
Like a big stubby, yeah. I remember those and the ones with like the big divot in the middle and
That's
everything.
them, yep.
Yeah, like
Yep.
I remember like
They come in like 1 millimeter, or like 1, 1.5, 2.0, and 3.0, or something like
and
that.
I remember like that's what got me into the teardrop shape.
Okay.
And then I remember like through discovering stuff with an assortment of picks, like it definitely was not the most inclined early to like a bigger, more traditional regular size pick. I remember also somewhere in that assortment were those weird little Gibson teardrops and things like that. And so like I started to get into those types of shapes. Those were never my favorite, but I played the purple ones for a really long time. I remember like really getting into those and then discovering Tortex and Delrin and stuff like that. And so I've always been a Dunlop pick guy, like forever.
Sure.
And then the penultimate was the Jazz 3 forever. It's like once you found, and it was like, you know, not the most like gratifying looking pick to, but you know, it's like, oh, I was used to playing these funky little purple things and other colored things, and then it's like, you know, the Jazz 3 just felt more mature as like, oh, like I found out, you know, so and so is playing this type of pick, or like my idols at the time were playing these types of picks, the black ones and the red ones, of course. So I got really into Jazz 3s, and that was my pick forever. And
was it red or black or both?
I probably did both, and I didn't have an opinion on which was which. I probably just played whatever I had available to me or whatever I got at the time. I'm more in tune with the finer details of these things now. I've always been a nerd, but that was early days. Like I really didn't know how to discern the details between these things.
Right.
So, and I still do, you know, like I got all kinds of marks all over my fingers and calluses on my thumb and my first finger from playing picks that are too close to the string, arguably. But that's the feel that I need. I need to be that in touch with, you know, for acoustic guitar, it's always about the like gray nylon with the grip, the one that everybody uses. I like the flex and the way that feels, and I don't have to be necessarily as like precise as I treat the electric guitar. But you know, the Jazz 3 came with its quarrels, because it's like, you know, I play with more adrenaline and a little less finesse live, so like I really beat on my guitar, and you wind up and overshoot that thing and you cut your first finger open. Like Jazz 3 leaves you exposed
been there.
at all times, like so yeah. I've always been into that shape though, and then along the way discovered variations of these things and other stuff, and for a while just like the nerd in me got carried away with like, you know, custom plectrums. And there's a guy in Switzerland that makes these wild like big teardrop kind of like candy looking things with a giant bevel tip on them, and we struck up a relationship. And he was Patrick Huffschmidt. He was sending me he was sending me picks. They're amazing. I mean, they're artisan picks. It's a completely different thing. And I have a jar full of them at home. You know, we struck up a relationship. He was almost like a pen pal for a while, and like, oh, it'd be cool if you did this, or can you do this shape with this material? And like he even made me ones that were like a little closer to the footprint, or that's a weird thing to say about a pick, but like the sort of overall silhouette and shape,
the thumbprint,
like the shadow it casts, you know, the thumbprint. He made me stuff that was because he bevels these picks by hand.
Oh wow!
So he was making stuff that was way too close to the belt for his own fingers. He was making me some small. I'd love to show you those sometime. They're made out of a wild material, but they look like the size of a Jazz 3, but they have this crazy arc and bevel sharp tip to them. And you know, he never made them as a production thing, but he fired off a couple of those for me, and I liked some of his larger ones too. And I played them for a while. There was actually one tour that I actually tried playing them live, and then I realized how impractical they are. They're about 30 to 45 euro a pick.
Wow.
They're insane. I mean, it takes him so much time to make them.
Yeah.
They truly are an artisan pick, and he lives like in the hills somewhere in Switzerland near castles, and he makes guitars as well, but he also makes plectrums.
I thought he made guitars as well.
He does, yeah. No, Patrick's a really good guy. He's one of those that's near and dear to my heart too, because he's an independent, just doing it on his own.
Yeah.
I really respect that. But, you know, sort of weaned myself off of these things because they're a little practical. So at home, I'll mess around with them from time to time. They're fun for a different feel. They come in all kinds of wild materials. They are just fun to play with and to look at, and they're really cool. So fast forward from there, you know, I started getting back into what I'm the most comfortable with, which is the Jazz silhouette, and that just makes the most sense. And I can like put my logo on them, I can huck them at the crowd, I can do all these types of things.
Talking about Tortex now.
Yeah, now I'm talking about back to the Tortex, and then I got into prime tone. So then prime tone started to happen, and for me, prime tone was a little funny because the Jazz shape ones were never sharp enough for me. So it was like, okay, no, back to the Tortex. So then we did branded custom ones, of course, and I was doing 0.88s. I was using 1 mil, and kind of trying to find my way between. It's always a compromise. I like a thicker, more deliberate, stiffer pick on 6-string standard tuning, but I like something that has give on the lower strings for 7-string in that register, so it's really kind of a push and pull at all times. And then the flows happened, and they're like the perfect balance between like a more refined, mature, beveled plectrum meets all of the things that I like about a jazz silhouette. But I'm playing the regular size one, not the jumbo one. So if you stack it up to a jazz pick, they're still more in the realm of a regular size silhouette.
Right.
There's something about it, the bevel and the grip and where it all sits, that to me, like, that's my comfort zone. So I play 1 millimeter flows.
Nice.
And I make a pick last like a week, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, you haven't been calling very often.
No,
so like...
it's unbelievable. And like when fans ask for a pick right off the edge of the stage now, sometimes I forget and I give them the pick from that show, and I go, I just should keep like branded Tortex on me so I can give them those. We have the pick packs as well at the table, which are wonderful. They're going over great. We have branded ones from The Way Forward and The Shape of Color that we did through Sheet Happens.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, they're wonderful. We love them, and they're a hit. So
cool.
Those are really cool. But yeah, I'll from time to time, like in a sentimental exchange, I'll like give a fan a pick that I like I'll give them the flow that I played the show with, and then I reach in my pocket to like the next day for soundcheck, and I'm like, oh shoot, I could have got 3 more shows out of that pick.
Right.
It's really funny. So they're super durable, and I like them a lot, and they sound ridiculous. Like they just have crazy attack, but they're subtle when you want them to be. They're just a really dynamic pick. They sit well in the hand. And yeah, I really like them a lot. And I know that a lot of guys, like a lot of my peers, have switched to the flow as well.
It's been incredible. We actually, just on the other side of the fence, so it's been kind of a crazy thing because, we created it. The story is out there, but Andy James asked for something us to recreate an old pick, the Jazz Tone 208 in Ultem, and then gave it to Petrucci, and Petrucci was like, man, I can't stop playing with your pick. Like, I can't play your pick now. And then it was like, so we go, well, let's make all the gauges and put it out. And we've never had a more successful launch to a pick line.
That's amazing.
Ever. Because as soon as folks like yourself, like you were one of the very first adopters out of the gate, and you're like, hey, I want to try that. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm definitely switching over to this. I'm like, okay.
They're so good, man.
It was interesting.
And like Tosin and Javier's pick were sort of like slightly foreshadowing. They're different because the material's different and the flex is different, but the grip orientation and the size, I was like that. I started to get into them, and I was like, oh, I like these for a lot of reasons, but personally, I think 0.88, maybe 0.73 is the lowest I can go before I start to get a little squirrely. Yep. I need a rigid pick. So
totally understand that. Well, it's cool. It's cool to hear the evolution of where you come from and where you've ended up.
Yeah, it's all relatively like in the ballpark. Like these things, with apart from crazy artist hand plectrums and things that I've entertained before. It all tends to land in the same neighborhood for me, which is just like in the jazz realm. And
speaking of that kind of high end stuff, I mean, did I send you the Flow 420?
No, what is that? Is it massive?
Yeah.
Oh, they're huge.
So
Flow 420.
Yeah, it's AKA the 4.2, but the boss let me make it the 420.
Oh,
See the 420 right in the center because he knows I love cannabis. He knows that a lot of my artist friends, and it's an interesting beast. Like, a lot of people, they go, oh, that's too big. And I gave one to Tony McAlpine at the John Petrucci camp. And he's already a 3.0 guy anyway. And he was like, what? And he came back the next day, I need a big bag of those things.
I might have to try these. And the tip is sharp.
It is sharp for considering, but the bevel, it's bigger and it's a slightly different sound. So you have to kind of relax a little bit. It's kind of like the element of having a lot of leverage,
Stay with me. I'm pulling a guitar out.
Yeah, grab one. Grab it. You gotta check it out.
They went into the venue. No, wait. Nope, I got one.
Okay.
It's not mine, though, but we'll do it anyway.
It'll work.
I'm stealing Thomas's LSL right now.
Yeah, cool.
I'm going to try these while we're live because...
Oh, that's a beautiful guitar.
It is, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that color.
Super nice. Great fingerboard on this one, too. Oh, yeah. So I really wanted to get into the 3. That was the one, because I was looking for, like, when you said you were going to do, like, plectrums, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, so, but the 3, and it's funny how little micro measurements, like, they make all the difference.
Huge
like,
difference.
1.5 was weird, 8.8 was cool, but 1 was the one for me.
Yeah.
Where I tried 3, and I'm like, ooh, there's so much I like about it. I'm going to try the show with this tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, and it's loud.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Wow, man. Yep. I'm a big fan. I'm gonna try this.
You can take here. I'll give you a handful. Of
Oh,
this.
that'd be amazing. I'm gonna show Thomas too.
Especially if it catches hold and if you dig them. Well, there's a 73 right there.
Amazing. Oh, dude, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna try these out. These feel great. And the thing that I like a bigger pick, because there's something addictive about holding something with a little bit more thickness.
Totally, dude.
I don't know what that is.
No, you know this from guitar necks though too. Like when the guitar neck is too thin. Like I don't. It's not that I'm anti the Ibanez style. Like
I like it too, but
I fell in love with it for a while. But like the older I've gotten, the more I've played more traditional styles, and I want a little bit something more substantial in the neck profile. And like I remember visiting Def Leppard.
Okay.
And Phil Collin showing me his custom Jackson.
And it's got a bat on it.
Baseball bat, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it felt so good. It I don't know if I would ever order a guitar like that, but it makes a good point that there's more ergonomic to hold on to.
Yeah.
And in feeling the weight, it takes a little bit of the sensitivity out of like your connection to the tip at first in comparison to something that's thinner that can snap for you. But then as you relax the wrist a little bit, you come back in touch with that.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, you guys did a really good job with the bevel. And that's the whole concept of a plectrum, is that, like a larger plectrum, is that it relaxes the grip because the thumb and the first finger don't have to actually connect, which creates a relaxed sense of, or lack of tension in the wrist and the forearm. But then the magic is that no matter how big the grip surface is, as long as the bevel falls away to a sharp tip, it actually always feels like you're connected to the string. Like Patrick makes picks that are like
super thin,
a gumdrop. Like they're absolutely massive. Yeah, and they still have this tip to them where, it looks ridiculous to hold, and you watch somebody playing and you're like, what? But I mean, guys with carpal tunnel are able to relax and play guitar. I think that speaks.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and same goes for, like you were saying, with the neck as well. Like what Ola Strandberg is doing with the
Endure neck
and all that.
Love that neck.
It's actually about mass. Really, it's about density and like size. I'm always torn though, right? Like I'm a Sir guy. I play moderns, which are they're a precision and really dialed instrument, but the neck profile, the modern elliptical profile, is not as thin as you think it would be when you compare it to that of an Ibanez or something. It's actually a little bit more round and has a little more size to it, which I like. Then I'll pick up an Ibanez and I'll go, no, I do like a wizard neck, and there's things I like about all these things, but
different flavors.
It's just different flavors, and that's why I like to bring a few guitars on the road and switch things based on my mood.
And it's nice to have contrast. It's nice to be able to switch it up. Not everything should be the same. That'd be boring.
I always use the analogy like, some meals you eat with a fork, other meals you eat with a spoon. Like, you wouldn't use the same utensil. Yeah, you wouldn't use the same utensil for everything. So it's like, it's about variety. This is crazy, though.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it doesn't become your main pick, it's going to be a thing that you're going to enjoy on the side. It's like
it has that really nice glide to it. And actually, that's the one thing about a bigger pick is arguably there's more of that quote unquote flow from the way it rolls off the string.
There's actually technically more bevel.
There is more bevel, and yeah, it doesn't get hung up like a playing card in a bicycle spoke or something. It has a different flow, for lack of a better description, to it, which is great.
Right. Well, the next part of this I don't want to stop you from jumping
No,
at the 420.
all
but
good.
The
Stoked on that.
the other aspect of what I'm asking all my favorite players that I get to hang out with and talk to is just, I'm interested in knowing like what maybe might be your perspective on life, like around like, again, if it's not a big thing, if you don't have like a grand perspective, it'd be interested to know like what just kind of at this time is getting you through your days, keeping you motivated and inspired. Maybe something you can share with us.
For sure. Probably best that we did this now, because had you had asked me a year ago or something, maybe I'd be confused or not have the best response. But life is funny in the way that it unfurls. So specifically this year has been a challenging one for me, and definitely shifted my perspective, or sort of like maybe had me spending more time realigning like my values and expectations of things, or what it is that I'm focused on. This year, for the first time, I took, or have been taking, fitness and nutrition a lot more seriously. And it's something that I'm pretty hooked on now. I'm trying not to be incredibly neurotic about it, but there's something about curating and fine-tuning like my intake and my output, rather than before, where I was out of touch with myself and would just, lifestyle was just whatever, whenever, and exercising a little bit of discipline, exercise in general, being really mindful of from a nutritional standpoint, like the quality of the things that I'm taking in. And on top of that as well, like I've started to develop an interest in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic herbs and things like that, and I've been taking some stuff to help soothe and remedy things that have maybe troubled me throughout my whole life. I just turned 29, and I think maybe sometime around this age is when people start to experience a shift in things. And I've always been really like high strung, like anxious, like and it's just the way that I'm wired, the way that my brain works. But in discovering a new approach to health and in general, just fitness, nutrition, and things to help support and complement that, like herbs and stuff, like something in me is really interested, like the same way I get nerdy about guitar stuff, like I get really nerdy about that stuff. And it's been nice to like help see some progress and fix some things, change my disposition. I discovered mindfulness and meditation in the process. And you and I have talked about your passion for yoga and these types of things before, so I'm now getting some days I'm confident that I'm really good at it, other days are terrible, but that's how meditation works, right?
Right.
That is what it's about. The practice is never going to be perfect, but it's about the practice itself.
Yeah.
So now that I understand that, I'm really enjoying mindfulness in general, and yoga is something that I'm super interested in, and I haven't figured out the best way to get started, or to find a place where a newbie can get comfortable in my city. We'll probably talk about that later today, like when we're done with this. Yeah. But that's where I'm at right now, and I have this like urge to write an EP or my next body of work that's sort of themed around the pursuit of these things. And the word circadian keeps going over and over in my my mind. I have some really cool imagery in mind. I already have an artist picked out and stuff for it, but I'm kind of like already thinking that I want to channel like my like little self-discovery like journey and like what I've been through this year into music. I tend to do that like inadvertently anyway. I always sort of channel what's on my mind, or things that I think about, imagery, these types of things. But I feel compelled to do so because it's been a major component of my existence this year. So like really, in terms of like, that's sort of the backstory on that. But philosophy is just for me now, it's about taking more time for myself, slowing down, like you mentioned in my stellar 10 out of 10 intro at the beginning of this interview, that I'm like a self-made kind of guy, independent. Like I do everything from the music to the management and these types of things, and I've always been that way. Definitely burnt out a little bit this year, as a person would when you don't sleep and you just constantly slave for it. So this is me trying to find the center again, and I think that this is applicable to everybody. I think everyone has this period in their life, whether it happens to you later or it happens early. I have a lot of friends that suffer from anxiety and, mental illness, mental health type situations, where I thought I was bona fide and pretty rock solid until I got the cage rattled on me this year. And it comes from a lot of things, like, some certain aspects of my life changed, and, my environment and all these types of things. And I bit off a little more than I could chew, and then found myself in a situation like, okay, how do I find the center again? So this is me trying to figure that out. And I've discovered a lot of things, like beyond Chinese medicine, and so the sort of the Ayurvedic approach to herbs and naturopathy, like discovering, how that connects to modern medicine as well. And I've learned a lot through, I have a functional med specialist that I've been working with, and, not because I'm unhealthy or unwell, but because I want to optimize my approach at life. Sure. And discovering, like, the value of micronutrients and minerals and these things. And it's like we take our bodies for granted, and I never really cared, and now I want to make it a fine-tuned machine because I want to feel inspired, I want to perform the best. So beyond that stuff, I've discovered acupuncture. I've discovered red light therapy, which I'm doing in my spare time. I got a red light kit from a company called Juve. They make an amazing product. It's red light and near infrared light. It's unbelievable what it does for my mental disposition, my physicality, workout recovery, all these types of things. I'm really, like, with discovering mindfulness, I'm wanting to, like, go home and float. I haven't tried that yet. I really want to try that. And on top of that, like, just trying to absorb different approaches to living this life versus just kind of going through it with your head in a cloud. I want to be, like, tuned in, and I'm feeling better about it. There's still a lot that I'm working on, but, I think this is the best way to approach it, and hopefully it's something that's going to aid in my ability to do what I do better and for longer, and just to be happy and content with myself and stuff like that. It started to slip a little on me this year, so rather than panicking and letting myself completely descend or going in a direction which I'm very adverse to, which is like pharmaceuticals or anything like that, it's about, like, finding how to do it naturally, right? And it's been a fun journey. It's tumultuous, and you don't always get everything right, but it's nice to have goals, working on your physique at the same time as your mental wherewithal, and just trying to be centered and more balanced individual. I constantly use the Libra zodiac sign as like a theme, like a visual and sort of just overall, like, illusion that I draw to and from in my music. There's a song called Libra at the tail end of The Shape of Color, and then hidden throughout the album imagery, the cover imagery of The Way Forward, there's the Libra scales are mounted off of the temple on the front and the back of the cover. And myself, my mother, and my father are all born within the same, like, week. My mom's September 28th, my father's October 5th, and I'm the 6th. So, and I'm an only child, so the three of us in one house are all Libras. So for me, it's always been like, I thought I was a balanced individual, and now it's like tongue-in-cheek, because it's like you learn you're not. So how do you do it? How do you go from tipping the scale in one direction or another to actually weighing them both out? So that's like, I mean, you'll spend your whole life doing it. I think we all are. But for me, it's like, it went from being something that I was confident in to now being like, okay, no, I don't have a handle on it. So how do I find the center? Right. So that's where I'm at.
Well, it's interesting. I want to go back to the part, just like the beginning part here. You're explaining, talking about meditation, and some days you feel like you're good at it, some days you don't. You know, and I find that for myself, like, I went through a lot of that discovery too, and I still find that some days I can sink in, drop into, like, this thing, and kind of get out of the mind, so to speak. But I think just like guitar practice in a lot of ways, it's not necessarily about, I mean, when you're practicing, you're not necessarily good, like, especially when you first start out, and anytime you're practicing something or you're learning something, there's this huge curve, and you're not a professional,
For
right?
sure.
And the thing with meditation, I think it's one of those few things that we do that doesn't necessarily have purpose other than to create space, like the way that you would even just put enough space between tracks on an album.
Yes.
Right, or not enough space. It's having value, putting value on space.
Exactly.
Right? And so I think that in a lot of our pursuits, that we oftentimes we don't always necessarily know it, that we're looking for a space, that we're looking for that, but or that's what's going to make the things that we do that much more impactful.
For sure.
But when we start to see the value in space, and we go, oh, you know what, I'm going to put space here, 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 so that when I wake up there, I'm going to be really fresh. And there's certain things as you get older, you start going, well, I can't grind all night long anymore, man.
No.
It's not the way this body's made. I've got to replenish.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely been something that I didn't think I was capable of doing until I started to get into it, and then it just took the right sort of anecdotal analogies and metaphors to understand what meditation and mindfulness is, and then learning how to, admittedly, I'm not the best at translating what I'm applying within the practice outside of the practice. So that's me. I need to be more present and apply some of those things, like being more mindful in the moment when I'm not actually practicing meditation. I'm getting better at it in the confines of that 10, 15, 20 minutes. I find myself sometimes reverting back to other patterns and things where I'm like, okay, no, like, you know what you should be doing here. You know, almost like a CBT, kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy approach to, like, hey, get yourself out of it. Like, think about, you know, so just with meditation alone, like, understanding how to, like, short that loop that goes on where we constantly think and ruminate just by thinking about the breath or something that's happening in front of us.
Yes.
Yeah, feet on the ground or whatever, something that's present and mindful. Like, that's really helped me. Also helps me connect. I feel a lot more calm pre-show, during, and post. I still have that surge of adrenaline, and I'm hyper aware and very connected, but I'm not fight or flight. I'm not worried.
Good.
Whereas I used to be. So that's translating well inadvertently in that aspect, but it's the way I interact with, you know, certain aspects of my life, or, you know, these types of things. They should spill over into your relationships. These are where we need to get better at
Eventually.
practicing. Yeah, and that's what I want, is I want to be a lot more balanced and centered and calm.
Well, it's interesting because I know that there's a lot, an aspect, at least for myself, especially in the beginning, I thought that that meditation really needed to be something that I was actively trying to figure out and actively do and analyze. Like, I would let myself remain an analytical mind, whereas I found out years in now that it's like, there's an aspect of it that we do that, but oftentimes to get better or to to progress necessarily in it isn't a striving. It isn't a doing at all. It's a relaxing into this moment, a relaxing into your natural self, your natural breath, and accepting that for what it is, right?
Just be.
Yeah, so by being, and you're like, oh, again, I go back to this space. It's like you have just enough moment to kind of be collected and move to the next doing, when it's time to do that. That's really cool to hear your progress, and that you're seeing some success.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's always a struggle. Like I said, some days you're great at it, other days you're just they call it the monkey mind, right? It's just like, oh my god, I can't shut off. And there's a place in Toronto, they do guided group meditations. It's like a brain gym, they call it.
Cool.
It's really cool, and there's like ergonomic seating and cool lights, and some of the particular workshops will they hook you up to that Muse headset with the app to track your brain progress, brain waves, while you're doing it. So in a 40-minute session, congratulations, you were able to sustain 3 whole minutes of real focus. But the way they do it, though, is it's really encouraging. So it charts your brain activity, and it shows you how long you were actually able to get a handle on those waves and sustain. But it shows you how many recoveries you had, and those are the encouraging things. So and in 40 minutes, you may have only really had about 3 total minutes of real sustained focus, or just that, that oneness. But you recovered 85 times from letting go of it. No, that's a really good thing to know.
Oh, it's huge.
It's a wonderful app. And it's a headset that you sync with your phone. And when I started to get into that, I got really hooked on it. Okay, I want to be better at this. I really want to let go. And some days you just can't, because body chemistry and what's going on in your head, you just won't be able to. But other days you're like, wow, I am so one today.
Right.
And that's really cool to experience that. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention before as well, something that I discovered, I just recently did, in September, I did Southeast Asia, Japan, Australia, New Zealand in a month. We were on an airplane every morning for every day in September, with barring a few off days. We slept maybe 3 to 4 hours a night for the entire month of September, which completely ruined me.
Totally.
It took me a week and a half to shake jet lag when I got home from New Zealand. That's the longest bout of jet lag I've ever had, and then I couldn't stay asleep for more than 4 hours. Try convincing your body after it learns that it's like basically like you're at war. Like, you go to sleep in the trench, aka the hotel room, and then it's like as soon as you hit that anything resembling a deep sleep, your tour manager's waking you up and it's time for lobby call. It really screwed me up, and I couldn't figure out how to get a handle on my sleep, even after the jet lag had worn away. So I discovered a practice in Toronto, in the city. It's a clinic called Soul 7, and it's an amazing place where they the individual, Bob, his last name is evading me at the moment, but he has a wonderful story about how he discovered alternative healing. It's bittersweet. He lost his wife to cancer, but he was on a journey to discover alternative practices beyond even naturopathy and herbs. Somebody had taken, he used to be a lawyer, and I think somebody he knew had taken him on a retreat in, I believe it was Peru, where he met some individuals that were gathering there that have a very distinct connection to the earth and the way we vibrate, and a completely different school of thought with this type of stuff. And it seems pretty woo-woo for a lot of people, I think, but
is it ayahuasca journey or something?
Not ayahuasca. No, actually connecting, like earthing, like literally connecting to the vibration of.
Every time I hear the South America story, I'm like, oh, it's got to be.
No, and I got a buddy who went and did that too. I have another friend who actually went to Peru and did that.
Yeah,
I just saw him in Vancouver. He's a great friend, and he changed arguably for the better and discovered himself with that whole thing. But no, this is more about the actual way we vibrate and the frequencies that the earth and we emit as people, and acknowledging that healing starts with balance within yourself, and that we actually have the tools to heal.
Dude, I'm right on that page.
Yes.
I've been reading a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I know about Joe Dispenza.
Oh, you do?
It's huge for me.
Yeah, so You Are the Placebo and the newest one, it was great. It's becoming supernatural.
Being able to actually meditate far beyond what you and I are talking about, which is quite rudimentary in comparison, into accessing the quantum field to visualize and repair. I mean, Joe's story is unbelievable. Well, he repaired his spine from an injury, which is
incredible. In 8 weeks, 9 weeks, or something like that.
It's incredible. So Bob, who started this clinic Soul 7, it really is sort of rooted in the same thing, and they use technology there. There's a German technology called OnDemand, which is is basically a synthesizer. It's like a theremin.
Wow.
And it connects to you in a way that is able to actually read all of the various fields of energy within us, so nervous system, mental, digestive, and the same machine that takes a read on every single one of these hemispheres within the body is actually able to pinpoint where the deficiencies in energy are, and then emit vibration and frequency to soothe those. So it's a combination of binaural audio.
Wow.
So it soothes the brain and puts you in rest and digest, gets you out of the fight or flight, then full body muscular neurovibration that actually uses basically tuned 808s, basically heavy bass lines.
That's so cool.
In a pod to vibrate the body. So I was able to recalibrate my sleep just from listening to binaural audio and being rocked in a cradle like a baby by
Oh, because this is one of the pod things. It's not floating.
It's not floating.
But
You're
this is a
lying
different
in
kind of
like a
pod.
leather pod filled with speakers, and
Okay, I've seen this somewhere on.
You feel almost weightless, and it just vibrates you with soothing music and ambience and binaural audio. So there are frequencies that you can't really hear that are like subliminally tucked underneath the sound of this music that are speaking to the brain in a way that allows it to like let go of emotion and these things and soothe. And they do way more than that there. That's just at the surface. Okay. They also, are helping people with, people who have cancer and other things. Like, it's pretty amazing what they're doing with like these blankets that are filled with crystals and vibration. And it's pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, geez, we definitely have...
Way over. There's a lot more to talk about.
No, it's totally fine. I know we're going to continue this conversation. But, that's the thing about this podcast I love is, it's mine, so I'm just going to, I shoot for 15 to 20 minutes, and if it goes 3 hours, then we'll work it out.
Yeah, eat your heart out, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Wow, he's totally, become one of the heroes, in the podcast world, right?
I love it.
Like what a stud.
My manager and I have been talking about. I had an idea at the beginning of the year that I'd like to do one that I can do with a recorder when I'm on tour with people, to be able to just when we link into a fest or when we are touring with somebody, that I could generate some content, or do it when I'm at home in Toronto and bands come through, and do it with colleagues and stuff. We've been talking about it. It's somebody that we know who's part of a podcast network actually approached us to help us facilitate it. So I think I'm going to take a stab at it too.
Yeah, you'll have a good time. I mean, you should actually check out for fun. It's maybe a year or two old now, but there's if you've already seen it, the episode of Joe's with it's got Jim Brewer on there and Russell Brand, and so they both Russell Brand is really the main featured guy, but about an hour, that thing's 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes. Towards the end of the podcast, Russell's asking so you love to do this podcast, and he's like, man, let me tell you about why podcasts are badass. And they spend 35, 40 minutes, and you should just watch that
segment,
because you'll just be like, oh yeah, duh, of course I want my own podcast. I love it,
and I think it's healthy, and I think talking about these things with people and establishing a connection or a new perspective on that stuff is super healthy.
Same.
I think it's really cool. And then other people, I know that I benefit a lot from listening to these conversations. Even in my journey with health and discovering these types of things, there's some amazing Joe Rogan podcasts where he talks to people like Rhonda Patrick, who's she's unbelievable. I learned so much about just nutrition from just listening to her speak for an hour and a half. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So without his podcast, I would have never found out about her and the things that I've learned. So
yeah, I found out about a bunch of stuff through Joe, and just it's funny because one of my favorite authors too, Graham Hancock, was featured. I kind of found out that Joe was doing the podcast by the fact that Graham Hancock ended up on his thing talking about ancient civilizations and all these great things and supernatural stuff. But well, I digress from that point.
Sure.
To wrap it up and ask you what I like to know about the underdogs. Who do you know that's out there doing music that maybe the world needs to know more about? Do you have 2 or 3 recommendations you could give us?
There's a few that come to mind. Yeah, there's a good buddy of mine from Norway who did all of the sound design and key related elements of my latest record, The Way Forward. Somebody that I collaborated with. I wanted to work on a song with somebody versus what we're used to in this world, which is just guitar solo feature. I decided I wanted to actually do a co-write with somebody who approaches this music in a completely different way. So his name's Owane, Owane. He's from Norway, young kid who's a multi-instrumentalist. He makes his own stuff too. He's great. I've been a big fan for a long time, and a buddy. So I hit him up and I said, hey, here's the deal. I've got this idea for concept for this song. Do you want to dive in with me? And we ended up loving the process so much that I was like, can you just play keys on everything? I'm going to send you shit as I finish it. And can you just add your touch to it? And do you want to be a part of the record? And he was gracious enough to give me his time and his efforts to do that. So he's amazing. Wayne, everyone needs to check him out. If you're into proggy, fusion-y, guitar centric, keyboard centric, type stuff like that. He's great.
Cool.
For guitar players, there's this kid from Australia named Stephen Taranto, Stephen with a PH. He plays in a band called the Helix Nebula, which is Simon, who plays bass with Plenty.
Simon Grove,
yeah, it's Simon's other band, Simon and Jake, actually. Yeah, so check out the Helix Nebula because their stuff is amazing.
Incredible band.
Yeah, they're amazing. And when they're ready to do it, I'd love to have them out. We talked about that.
Please bring them to the States.
Yeah,
for me.
we've been talking about it. Would love to do that. But Steven is the guitar player that, like, the underdog, like, people don't really know about him because, you know, people know about the Helix Nebula, but I think they're getting ready to do a release that's hopefully going to put them on the map in the way that they deserve to be.
Mm-hmm.
Steven is, like, I get the same feeling from him that I got when I found, like, Wes Hauk for the first time, or Sims, if you know about Sims. Sims Cashian, young kid. Not to take anything away from the both of them, they're both scary amazing.
Yeah.
But if you ask them both about Steven, they'll say, oh yeah, no, he's the guy. Like, and it's absolutely disgusting how much of a natural he is. Like, I've never seen somebody so intrinsically intertwined with the instrument. He's unbelievable. So yeah, check out Steven. And I'm not really sure about any other stuff. Like, in this realm, there's a band from Australia called Polaris. They're a metalcore band, young metalcore band. My buddy Ryan Sue plays in that band, and they're doing amazing things. Like, I believe they're carrying the torch for metalcore for our generation. Like, and I grew up on that kind of stuff. I'm a little less into it these days, but, like, their record, The Mortal Coil, which is like a year old now, is such a huge record for that genre, and for them, like, it's just like a sort of definitive metalcore release. And I'm just happy that, like, kids, like, even like little younger than me, are, like, doing that, and they're good buddies. They're very well deserving of everything they're doing. So yeah, Polaris, Steven Taranto, Owain, and
Helix Nebula.
Helix Nebula. Yeah, for sure, that's Steven's band. And shoot, I mean, there's always a ton of stuff, but I'm gonna leave it at that. I think that if you're into guitar music or heavy music, like, that's enough to get, you know, to sort of, like, kind of sharpen your pencil on.
Yeah, it's just nice to know what you hold in high regard, you know, as somebody that's, you know, I'm sure your fans would like to know, like, what are you listening to? What are you up to? You know?
Another one I'll throw in there is Era, the latest Era record, and they're really good friends of ours. Yeah, they're Sumerian Records band, ERRA.
Okay.
The latest record's called Neon. Really, really like that record, and they're such nice guys, and every time we link up, like, we just ran into each other in Tokyo, and, like,
cool.
You know, we just saw them in the city in Toronto when I was at home. They're doing a tour with After the Burial, the Acacia Strain, and shoot, who else is on that tour?
Some heavy bands.
Yeah. Oh yeah, huge tour for them. But anyway, that album is super musical, and it's sort of all of the things that I'm sort of describing: guitar centric, heavy metalcore, catchy choruses and stuff like that. Yeah. Cool. So that's pretty much it.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us, Aaron. I really appreciate that, man. It's cool to catch up with you over the podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
But, personally, I'm a little hungry. I don't know about you.
We're about to do it. I'm starving.
All right, let's go get some food. This is the Signing Off Players Pick Podcast, Episode 3 with Aaron Marshall of Intervals. Thanks, and have a great day.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chris Johnson. Pool table. Painkiller.